Welcome to today's video on Unit 3. We're going to start talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. The first types of lines that we're going to talk about are parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines that are in the same plane, but they do not intersect. And notice this symbol here when you look at the picture. This symbol here means that the lines are parallel. So to write that two lines are parallel, you put two vertical lines next to each other. So this means that line JK is parallel to line LM. There are also lines that are called skew lines. They're lines that do not intersect but are not in the same plane. For example, line L here is in plane A. Line M here is in plane B. Notice they don't intersect because they are not in the same plane. Notice skew lines look like they would intersect if they were in the same plane, but because they're not in the same plane, they don't intersect. So that's something to keep in mind with skew lines, is that they look like they would if they were in the same plane, because if they were in the same plane, this one would go that way, line M, and it would intersect. But because they're not in the same plane, they do not intersect. Parallel planes are planes that don't intersect. So like for example here, plane A and plane B are parallel. So if we look at the figure here and we want to say name all segments parallel to BC. Well, BC is right here, straight up and down, right here. So we could say that AD is parallel to BC, right? AD. We could say that EH or HE is parallel. And we could say that FG is parallel to BC. Those are the three segments that would be. ED is not parallel to BC, even though they don't intersect because they're not in the same plane. So ED would be an example of a line that's skewed to BC because it looks like it would intersect, but it doesn't because they're not in the same plane. So now it says name all lines or segments that are skew to EH. So EH is here. So it needs to be skew to EH, meaning it's not in the same plane. So none of these above would be skew because they're parallel. So notice CD here, if you look, CD looks like it would intersect, but notice it's not in the same plane, so therefore it is skew. CF would also be skew. AB would also be skew because it doesn't intersect EH, but it looks like it would if they were in the same plane. Also, BG here, BG is skew because it does not intersect and it's not in the same plane. Some lines that are not skew, like AH is not skew because it intersects EH. AD is not skew because it's parallel to EH. Same with FG and same with BC. DE is not skew because it intersects along with FE. So basically, those are all the segments that are skew to EH. Name a parallel plane to ABG. Well, ABG is the bottom of this box, so parallel would be the top of the box, which is plane CDE. All right, so let's look at the next box. Name a plane that is parallel to RST. RST is the top of the box, so we could say plane XYZ. That would be parallel to it. Name all segments that intersect YZ. Well, YZ is right there, so SY intersects it. Same with XY. Same with TZ, the segment. Same with WZ. those four intersect YZ. Name all the segments that are parallel to RX. RX is up here at the top, sorry, right here. So parallel to RX would be SY, right? Because SY is parallel. Same with TZ, and same with QW. Those three would be parallel. All right, name the plane. So let's look at this one for number 3. Actually, for number 3, why don't you go ahead and try on your own, and then we'll go over the answers. All right, so check your answers. Plane parallel to MNR is POS. Skew to MP, well, MP is over here. And skew to it would be QR. Also skew to it would be TS. NR is skew to it, and so is OS. Those are skew to it. Which of the following segments is not parallel to PT? So PT is down here at the bottom. And parallel to PT would be MQ, which eliminates that one. NR, because NR is parallel to MQ, which is parallel to PT, so that makes NR parallel. OS is parallel to PT. TS is not, because notice TS intersects PT, so therefore it is not parallel to it. All right, so now if we have two parallel lines, we have certain angle types that are created. And first we're going to talk about just angle types in general, whether the lines are parallel or not. And we have angles that are formed when a line intersects two lines, and that line that intersects two lines is what's called a transversal. So that's a new vocabulary word that you want to pay attention to, the word transversal. That's a line that intersects two lines, not at the same point. So notice here in this picture, line T is the transversal for Q and R because it intersects Q and it intersects R at two different points. So T is the transversal. All right, so when you have a transversal that intersects two lines, there are two regions that are formed. There's the interior, which is between the two lines that were intersected. So notice these angles here are in the interior between Q and R. And then you have what are called exterior angles, the ones out here, that are outside of Q and R. They're not between them. So now, based upon where the transversal is, and remember this is the transversal, line T. So if it's on the same side of the transversal, then the angles are called consecutive. So the angles that are on the same side and in the interior are called consecutive interior angles, like angle 4 and 5 or 3 and 6. Those are consecutive interior. If they are on alternate sides of the transversal and they're not adjacent, like 4 and 6 and 3 and 5, then they are what are called alternate interior angles. But notice the 3 and 4 are not alternate interior because they're adjacent. They have to be on opposite sides of the transversal and not adjacent. Same thing with exterior angles. If they're on alternate sides of the transversal and non-adjacent, like 1 and 7 and 2 and 8, then they are what are called alternate exterior angles. And then, last but not least, if they lie on the same side of the transversal and one of them's an interior and one of them's an exterior, then they're what are called corresponding. Like, for example, 1 and 5 are corresponding because notice 1 and 5 are in the same spot, just on different lines. Notice 1 is the upper left corner, and so is 5 is the upper left corner on the line. Same with 2 and 6. Same with 3 and 7. Same with 4 and 8. Those are what are called corresponding angles. So here it says a group of nature trails is shown. Identify all pairs of lines to which A, B, and C are transversal. So notice line A here, it goes through C and it goes through F. So line A is a transversal for C and F. B is a transversal for C, F, D, and E, right? Because it goes through these arrows means it keeps going. So B would be a transversal for D, F, C, and E. So it'd be C, D, E, and F, basically. Oh, sorry, that would be C. Or sorry, B. That's right. So line C would be a transversal. It would go through B and D. It would also go through A. And it would go through F. Actually, it doesn't go through F. Sorry. It doesn't go through F here in the picture. All right. So now it wants to know the relationship between these two angles. So for example, angle 2 and angle 6. Well, notice the first thing it might be good is to see the transversal, and the transversal is C, right? And transversal is C. So notice 2 is an interior, 6 is an exterior. So it's not going to be interior or exterior angles. And notice that 2 is, if you look at it, 2 is in the bottom right and 6 is the bottom right. So that means they're corresponding angles. Corresponding means they're on the same spot, just different lines. Or not corresponding lines, corresponding angles. 1 and 7. So if you look at 1 and 7, here's 1 here, 7 there. C is the transversal. So notice you have two exterior angles because this is the interior right here. So the interior would be in here and the exterior would be outside. So that means they're alternates because they're on different sides of the transversal and they're both exterior. So that means they're alternate exterior angles. 3 and 8, notice 3 and 8 are both interior and they're on the same side of the transversal. So that means they are consecutive interior angles. Some people also call them same side. So if you see that, you'll know what they're talking about. So 3 and 5, so here's 3 and here's 5, they're both interior, but now they're on opposite sides of the transversal and they're non-adjacent, so that means they're alternate interior angles. All right, so go ahead and look at the next picture and see if you can't classify the relationships on your own, and then we'll talk about the answers in a little bit. All right, so looking at the picture, 4 and 5, notice 4's here, 5's here. Notice the transversal would be P. So those are interior and they're on the same side, so they're consecutive interior. 7 and 9, notice 7's here. 9 is here. So notice one's interior, one's exterior. They're in the same spot, just on different lines, so that makes them corresponding. 6C, 4 and 7. 4 and 7, they're exterior of L and M, and they're alternate, so that makes them alternate exterior. 2 and 11, 2 and 11, so now when you talk about 2 and 11, you're talking about line L and you're talking about line N. You can forget about M. So 2 and 11 are interior, and they're on alternate sides of the transversal P, so that makes them alternate interior. 8 and 9 are same side or consecutive interior. 3 and 5 are corresponding, and 1 and 12 are alternate exterior. And 1 and 9, I forgot about 1 and 9. So here's 1 here, and here's 9 here. Now notice one's interior, one's exterior, but they're on different sides of the transversal, and so that means there's no special angle type for that. There are none. All right, so the last one here, it says to name the transversal for 1 and 5. Well, here's 5 and here's 1, so the transversal would be L. And notice one's interior, one's exterior. They're in the same spot, just different lines. So therefore, they are corresponding. Three and eight right here and right here. So that means that the transversal is L. Now they're interior and they're on the same side, so that means they're consecutive interior. And then 4 and 6. 4 is here, 6 there, so L is the transversal, and these would be alternate exterior angles. All right, I hope you understood the video, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. All right, have a good rest of your day.